Hi, today we have on Miss Sarah, who is a regional project manager. Thank you so much for being with me today. Can you go ahead and start off by telling us about yourself?
Sure. As you said, my name is Sarah Means. I am a regional project manager for Johnson Controls, who is a global technology company. And specifically, I work in the fire and security area of that company. A little bit of a background about myself. Originally born and raised Oklahoma. I now live in Charleston, South Carolina. I did my undergrad at Oklahoma State. I have a bachelor's of science, engineering, technology, with the major being construction management technology. Years later, I did go get a master's of business admin from the Citadel here in Charleston. So that's a little bit about my educational background. Next.
So it sounds like you have a lot of different degrees. Is that necessary for a lot of project managers to have like a master's, the bachelor, or is it just that's something you wanted to do for yourself?
So something I kind of wanted to do for myself, and it kind of morphed into a project manager. When I first started my undergrad, I was actually a business major with a minor in Japanese.
Ooh.
Don't ask. I was I was heavy in politics and things at the time. But growing up, when I was about 12 years old, I started working for my dad's company. He has a security company back in Oklahoma. And it actually started because they needed a wire ran, and I was the only one small enough to fit through the crawl hole.
Oh
So
my
that's how it started when I was 12. And I continued to work for him on the weekends and summers. So then when I got to college and I was a business major, I was still working for my dad on the weekends, and a friend of mine said, "Well, you do all this work on construction sites. Why don't you major in that?" And I kind of laughed. I'm like, "Construction? That's not really a major." Well, it was. And I called over to the construction department, told them I was interested in learning more about it, and they took down my name. The next day, I walked in, and they said, "Oh, hi, you must be Sarah." And that almost immediately sold me, because in the College of Business, I had been just a number. It was a much
God.
bigger department. And I really liked that personal touch I got day one. As I learned more and more about the major, I realized how diverse the opportunities were from obtaining that degree. Plus, a lot of the classes were hands-on. I really enjoyed that. That fit my style of learning a little bit more. Plus, they had 100% employment rate upon graduation for years.
That's crazy.
That was very tempting. And as it progressed, it was a great fit for me. So that's just kind of how that happened. It was weird. And you just never know when opportunities are going to present themselves. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So it wasn't always something you wanted to do, which I would say might be typical for a career like that. It's not like you're building things every day.
Right.
But when you did make that transition from the business classes to construction, did you see a difference in the type of people in the classes? Like, was it then mostly male dominated, or were you just another one?
It definitely was. Graduation, we had about 180 graduates in my major, and there were 3 girls.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, the ratio is very different. As whereas the College of Business, it was, more 50-50, or even maybe more girls than boys. I remember back then, one thing that I really liked about it, and this is so vain, but in the business school, all the girls were dressed up, and in the engineering school, they didn't care if you rolled in your pajamas.
Mhm.
So I like that part about it as well. The classes themselves were definitely more difficult for me compared to some of the ones I had previously done. But like I said, there were hands-on classes. So one of my favorites was concrete technology, and you designed a mix to meet a certain strength. And then you went to lab and you mixed it based on your design, and then you let it cure, and then you broke it to see if you met design strength. And that just really made it all come together for me. And of course, a lot of these classes, I was the only girl, but I had also been on job sites for, a decade prior.
Mhm.
So it didn't faze me. I didn't notice it as much.
Yeah. So I might have missed this, but did you say what school you went to?
That was at Oklahoma State.
Okay. And do a lot of college students, do you know if they offer construction programs, or is that kind of hard
I'm
to
not for
find?
sure. Oklahoma State obviously did, and theirs was much more hands-on. I know that University of Oklahoma, which we don't like them, but they offer the program as well, and theirs is a little more business oriented than construction, as far as they didn't have as much the hands-on, as much concrete, steel, timber. They didn't touch on that as much. Theirs was more the business side.
So did you actually get to go to different types of construction fields while you were studying?
One of the requirements of my undergrad degree was to have an internship, and they now require two. I was fortunate enough back then, I actually did do two. And one summer I was an intern on a heavy highway expansion in Denver, Colorado.
Oh my God.
So it was amazing to be part of the expansion I-25 225 corridor. They were just getting started on the project, but the way it kind of fell into my lap during the interview is they put me with the public information team. So I thought that was really interesting, because I love to speak to people, I love to be involved. And it was a great experience to see another side of construction, of informing the public of what we're going to do. Sound walls was one of my little mini projects that I got to learn about out there. And I will say, I had a lot of dirty looks when I go to a community meeting and say, oh, I'm sorry, we're going to take 3 feet of your backyard and put up a 12-foot sound wall. Questions? So, it was interesting though, dealing with the public and the terminology that was used. It taught me a lot. And they treated me great as an intern. They really did. It was a wonderful experience. But I found that I missed kind of the actual construction, like the field,
Yes.
getting in the dirt. I missed that a little bit, but it also made me very good at public speaking, because I understood the processes that were going into it. When somebody was upset about us needing to take part of their backyard to put up a sound wall, I could answer them why that was a requirement, what the codes were, national codes, how the sound, studies that had been done. But the team, my company's team, taught me, because the first time I presented this information, I referred to it as based on the dB levels. And my team said, well, what's a dB? And I was like, well, the decibel. And they're like, what's a decibel? And I was like, well, it's a measure of sound. So when I went and spoke to the public about it, and I would say that, I would follow it with something like, your vacuum cleaner gives off 72 decibels. It taught me how to better communicate, and to how to be aware of my audience. And it was a great experience. And the next summer I had another internship, this time in Chicago. And that was exciting to get to go to another big city. And I was actually working for a fire and security company there. And I definitely got treated like a lowly intern. But I did get some exposure to access control. It's one of my first times exposed to that, and got creative with a design that the architects ended up liking, because I incorporated glass and marble into their design, not to disrupt the grand foyer. And they liked it, but then it kind of pissed off the sales guy I was working with my company, that I kind of stole his thunder. And I spent the rest of the summer filing. So 2 very different experiences, both gave me a lot of knowledge on who you're working with, what can happen. I don't really feel like it was because I was a girl, to tell you the truth. I think that there are just people out there who are intimidated. And being a girl may have been extra salt on the wound to this guy in Chicago, but oh well, his loss, not mine.
So where did you go from there? You got your foot in. I guess you already had your foot in through your dad, but you kind of touched different aspects of construction. What was your first job that you chose and why?
So before I graduated, I took advantage of every resource on campus. Every time there was a job fair, I interviewed with everybody, even companies I knew I didn't want to work for.
Mhm.
I used them to practice interviewing, to become more
That's really
comfortable.
smart.
So that would be one of my advice for, anyone out there is experience. There's job experience and there's also life experience. And sometimes some of your life experiences, you have to seek them out. So
Mhm.
seek out those job fairs, practice, practice, practice. My first job, I actually got from a job fair there in college, and I was a construction major. This company was a fire and security company. And when I first approached them, I handed them my resume, and at the top, it said major construction management. And I still remember Ed looked at me and goes, "We're a fire security company." I went, "I know." And he was like, "Yeah, but you're construction." I go, "I know, keep reading." And then he saw an internship in Chicago doing security. And he goes, "And I said, "Yes, keep reading." And then he saw Denver and he was like, "Oh, she's gone places," because they were worried about somebody moving out of state and not staying. So that was the first okay. And then he saw the years of experience I had with my dad's company. And then all of a sudden he was like, oh, maybe you are in the right spot. And, had a formal sit down interview with them the next day. They flew me to Indianapolis, is where this was. And they did a wonderful job of interviewing me because not only did I meet with people within the company, they had one of the younger girls actually from the office show me around the city.
Oh
They
my
wanted to
God.
make sure I liked the city, that I wanted to actually live there. So I thought that was really nice how that all transpired. And I ended up getting the job. I was in sales. They had a fancy name for it, but basically I sold security systems and did layouts, designs, met with end users, also worked on bid proposals, doing security work. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
So how did you go from there to where you are today?
Whew, try not to make this story too terribly long. So I had a job. It was a wonderful job. Taught me a lot. The struggles I may have had then were more because I was young than anything. Like I said, though, I really enjoyed the job, but then I had an offer to be a manufacturer's rep, and it paid a lot more money. So I took it and loved that job as well. But I quickly learned why the position was open, and it's because my boss was a terrible person.
Oh no.
I had nothing to do again with me being female. He was an ass to everybody. So I did not stay in that too long. Found another job doing commercial work, and at this time I did more design and engineering, and just really wasn't loving it and this and that. So I started seeking else. I went online and then applied for different jobs. One that I found was actually government security work in some town out east called Charleston. So I applied for it, and they actually called me a few days later and wanted to fly me out to interview for it. And I was so excited. And I remember sending my mom the job description. And like I said, it was government work, and I'd never done anything but commercial. And she read it and she goes, "What is this?" And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, "What do you mean you don't know?" And I'm like, "I don't know what those words mean or those acronyms and this and that." And she's like, "But you're flying there?" And I went, "Yep, tomorrow." And she's like, "Can you do it?" And I said, "Sure." And ended up was a great interview. They hired me. So I moved from Indianapolis to Charleston, South Carolina, and did government security for a while. One of the big programs I was on for a while was actually video surveillance systems in the daycares of Army bases across the
Oh,
US. And you never really think about stuff like that, but it was a really neat program. Worked on various other ones, but that was one of the big major ones I had done. That contract then was awarded to another company, That company knew I'd been on it. So then they hired me. So everything was great, still doing what I enjoyed. But then that contract ran out, and I learned the hard way with government work. It's all about the contract and if they can charge your time to a contract. So that ran out. Then I'm scrambling to find another contract that has a position that would apply to me. And that happened multiple times. But it was during that time that I also got my master's, traveling to a lot of different military and government sites. I don't have a military background. Nobody in my family does. So I didn't really fit in. And then I found out about the Citadel, and everyone, they all poofed their feathers up talking about the Citadel. And I'm like, well, I can get a ring. So I went and got a master's. The master's did allow me to fit into other job categories that we could ultimately charge more in those categories, which meant I could make more money. But it also gave me a ring. And with that ring, I was part of the group. I was accepted. So it was kind of interesting how that all unfolded. But then again, I was faced with, here's a contract running out, and scrambling to find coverage. And I was like, I'm tired of this. I want to go back to the commercial work. And I didn't know any commercial companies in South Carolina because I'd never done commercial work here. And I actually called one of my manufacturing reps that I had worked with from my very first job out of college. And I asked him, hey, who's the rep in South Carolina? And he was like, it's me now. My territory just expanded.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was like, okay, great. Who are some commercial companies? And so he gave me a few, and Simplex Grinnell was one of them. And I cold called them and told them who I was and was looking for something. And they were kind of like, okay, whatever, just send me your resume. And I did. And again, I kind of got lucky that all these managers were in town that following week for a meeting. And I went and met with them and got hired. So that's how I got, to the company. So that was Simplex Grinnell. We have merged. So it's Johnson Controls now, but my job hasn't changed for like 10 years. And when I was initially hired, I was a system support specialist. I assisted with design work. I helped the sales guys put together proposals and bid work. I did end user training, and I did system programming. So I was really getting groomed to learn more and more system programming. And I'd been there almost a year, and we won a large project that required a dedicated project manager. And I was standing by my car down in our Savannah office, and my boss called and was like, hey, would you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he said, oh, it should be about, 20% of your time. Well, it ended up being about 120% of my time and became my sole focus. And after about a year, my title officially changed to a regional project manager, and has been that for 7-8 years now.
So what does your day-to-day life look like then, like that? And then also, is there a lot of travel required? Because at first you were saying you had to move to different places to get those jobs, but now is there more stability that you are at that level?
So before I moved different jobs, but didn't have to necessarily move me until I made the big move to South Carolina. When I did government work, I traveled a lot. I was on a plane at least twice a week, sometimes 4 times a week. So there was a lot of travel, and everyone thinks it's glamorous. It's not. You pretty much see the airport, a hotel, a job site, and back to the airport. I mean, it's a lot of that there, because you want to come home for the weekends. And the position I'm in now, since I am a regional employee, I do cover multiple states. The first project I was on, though, being a project manager, I was very fortunate. It was here in the Charleston area, and it was for a very large data center. That project went on for about 8 years. So we had multiple buildings, and each building was a little over a year. So I was very lucky that the job site that was practically my second home was really only about 30 minutes from my
Mhm.
real home. But now I'm doing an airport, and it's about a $4 million project,
Oh
and
my
it's in Myrtle
gosh,
Beach.
that's so
So,
cool.
so it is travel now, but pretty much all the travel I do is by car. A couple of years ago, I helped with a project in West Virginia. That was a very long drive. So when I went there, I'd be there for a whole week and then home for a week and then maybe back. I have other friends that have my same degree that we're still in touch. Some of them do not travel at all, and some of them travel constantly. Some of them are with the same company, but yet manage 1 to 5 projects that may be in different states. So they go all over the place checking the status. And then others, like I said, are same place, never probably traveling more than a 30-45 minute radius. So it depends. I like having a regional level because one, if things got slow in Charleston, then I'm like, oh wait, there's a project in Myrtle
Mhm.
Beach. I can help with that because I have a regional status. That's one reason I like having that flexibility, because it provides more job security, I feel, for myself, since I cover a larger area. But the con comes with that yes, Monday morning I'm leaving the house at 5:30 a.m. driving to Myrtle Beach. So that's not fun.
So what do you do, for example, with the airport project? What are your roles to help make that come together?
So the airport one's a little bit different than some projects I've done in the past. In the past, I manage the security. So in the past, it was just cameras. It was just access control that I had to be concerned with. I of course worked with door hardware contractors or electricians to ensure rough-ins and other components were compatible and in place for our system. But on the airport project, we're actually the prime contractor. So we're performing as the general contractor, or GC. That means I'm getting questions about underground plumbing and sheetrock finishes and air duct calculations. And I have literally dug out some folders from undergrad trying to refresh myself on some of just even the terminology. Um, so I ask a lot of questions, and I really would encourage anyone going into any field at any age to continue to ask questions. Um, I don't know a lot of this stuff. So I listen to my people, but then where I get to show my strength is understanding the various trades out there, even if I have to ask to understand them, and then how that correlates to another trade. So I can ensure the processes are being done, things are done in the proper order. Um, there's rough-ins that one contractor does for somebody else. So used to, I only worried about my stuff, and right now I'm worried about everyone's. And my approach to project management is very hands-on. Just like in my undergrad, it made sense for me to be hands-on. I've continued that. So I probably spend about 80% of my time on site. It's the way I learn the best. I see the project status the best. I don't have to bother my people for information as much
Mhm.
as when I'm there and I see it. It also creates mutual respect, I believe, when you're actually there, when you're involved. I don't believe in titles. So when something needs to be done, I'm the first to jump in and do it as well. My new rule is Thursdays, everybody cleans up, and I'm out there with a broom just like everyone else. But the other part of it is there's a tremendous amount of paperwork. So I'm also in charge of all the drawings, specifications, making sure if additional information is needed, we do a request for information, an RFI. Then there's RFP, request for proposal for change orders that come about. Discussing those change orders with the end user and with other engineering firms seeking approval. This one's also very different because it's federally funded. So the paperwork is different, the documentation is different, the details are different. So it is, what I did before, I was very good at, but I did the same thing repeatedly for almost 8 years and had kind of lived in a bubble of that
Mhm.
project. Even though I was very good at it, I was in a bubble. And now my bubble's popped and I'm like learning all kinds of new things. It's great exposure and great experience. And I'm hoping from this project can be a springboard to other stuff because I'll be more well-rounded after this. Another thing that you have to do daily as the PM is manage the people. So I think a very important trait is to listen. So like I said, I ask these questions, but make sure you listen. There's also a lot of complaining. I'm the only girl there,
Oh
but
my
these
gosh.
guys, they complain a lot. So to help manage the people, manage the various subs, when to tell someone to take a break, when to figure out a way to remedy a situation, to tell when it's getting elevated, and sometimes just to let them talk it out. Luckily there have been no punches thrown yet, but and I will say, being a woman in this industry, sometimes I use that to my advantage as far as diffusing a situation
Mhm.
and make a joke. It was just a few weeks ago, actually, it was becoming pretty elevated and these guys were bashing each other, like, who would let you out here? And all this talk, much more colorful, of course. And I walked over there and I was like, I know, can you even believe they got some girl PM in this project? And it made them stop. It made them break. It kind of got a little chuckle, but it diffused the situation.
Mhm.
So sometimes you can use your gender to your advantage as well. And I do feel that sometimes when I ask questions, they may be better received because I am a girl asking, and guys are usually willing to help. So I don't have very much pushback when I ask questions, but I always tell them I'm asking because I want to learn.
Mhm.
I'm not questioning you.
You. So you kind of see a more positive effect of being a minority in your field.
Mhm.
Have you ever got a second glance from somebody?
Oh my gosh, yes. um, so some moments that were definitely eye raisers, I guess. There were moments, things very, very inappropriately were said to me when I was, early teens working with my dad's company. I learned to stand my ground back
Mhm.
then. I learned, you always just kind of have confidence about yourself and, look where you're going. Some of the same stuff they teach us girls walk into your car at night, have a mission. And I hate to say this, but you almost look unapproachable. Like, I got something to do and I'm busy. Don't mess
Yeah.
with me type of thing. So I learned that very early on. But even during my undergrad, I did have a college professor tell me engineering is not for women.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
How did
Um,
you react to that?
so anger, of course, was my first reaction. And then it just lit a fire in me. And I was like, really? That's what you think, you old fart? I'll prove you wrong,
Mhm.
And I was like, I feel sorry for him. He's like 100 years old. And, you know, um, and in his defense, I'm sure when he was in school, first of all, there were not hardly any women at all. He truly was old. Um, but the few women that were there were probably just there for education, to be a teacher, possibly a nurse. So I'm sure to him, it was difficult to see me there. I don't really care. All it did is fire me up to prove him wrong. Um, there are times that I can tell when I very first walk into a room, maybe there's some, wait, is she in the right place? Or, because I typically am the only girl.
Mhm.
Same goes for me. If I walk into a room and there's more than like one or two other girls, I think I'm in the wrong room. So it's kind of funny. But I haven't experienced much now. I'm maybe more when I was younger. And I think that had more to do with being younger than necessarily being a girl. But I've definitely had moments.
Do you think there are more women in construction now? Have you seen any change?
Yes, I definitely feel that there are the data center project that I was on for all those years. There wasn't as many women for the subs, like a concrete or electrical or the subs in the field didn't have as many. But as far as managers, the general contractor running that project did have quite a few females. And during the 8 years I was there, I saw more and more. And we're in legitimate roles, not just sitting behind a desk.
That's
So
great.
I've seen it just in the last 8 years.
So when you're working on these different projects as the project manager, is it your job to find those subcontractors?
Uh, to an extent, a lot of the time that's done during the bidding phase. And most, like the project I'm on right now, while we sought several different subcontractors to get pricing from, we knew that the actual customer had a preference. And it was in our best interest to not only use who the customer preferred, but other subcontractors who had a lot of experience out there. And I am very thankful for the subs we have on our current project because they know the ins and outs of
Mhm.
the airport. And if I say, where's, IDF 72, they're like, oh, it's upstairs over there by the bathroom. And that's really nice to have
Yeah.
when I'm the new one for that location. Other sites, we have, a pre-existing database of subcontractors that we would typically use, but we do a lot of work in-house as well. Um, so yeah, I help manage once on site. I would say the different personalities is where I think a lot of my time is spent when I said, ask questions and you listen. You also get to know the people. And then
Mhm.
based on what task is coming up, the best person for that or the best team and which teams work together, which ones don't. Sometimes you can take that into an account to schedule your work to be done to keep things running smoothly. Sometimes they just got to suck it up and work together, even if they don't like each other a whole lot. But that comes into that, kind of emotional intelligence. And I think women as a whole, maybe stereotypically, we can be more emotional, but because of that, we're more aware of it
Mhm.
and we can practice and we can actually be better. And then these guys don't even realize it when they're being emotional about it, and then they have no clue how to control it. So that's something that's interesting to handle both with subcontractors and your own personnel.
How long do you normally stay on those projects? And are you working with different teams or does it just vary, like you said?
It varies. So the project I'm on right now is 1 year long. Um, Other projects might be a month. It just depends. Some projects are 100% in-house technician and installers. And then typically though, most of the projects I have do involve at least an electrical subcontractor to do rough-in and conduit work. This one is unique where there's even more subcontractors since the scope is larger. It varies. And that is maybe one drawback I would say is the hours can be very long. Um, with the project one now, they're usually 12 to 13-hour days.
Oh my gosh. And
It,
5 days a week?
it's supposed to be four. We are working 4 10s to get more done in those days, but my days start earlier. And then since I'm on site and managing all the boy drama, at the end of the day is when I catch up on a lot of paperwork. Like I said, there is a tremendous amount of paperwork. So as far as besides experience and exposure to projects, I would, learn how to be fast on a computer. And it's amazing. All these guys are like, how do you type so fast? And my job site keyboard is actually missing some of the letters from the keyboard because they just worn off.
Mhm.
And every now and then somebody will use my desk and they're like, how do you type? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, there's no letters. I'm like, you don't need the letters. I'm like, just type. So they still like kind of do that hunt and peck stuff. But being efficient at those things really helps. It takes some of that stress off when I'm not trying to figure out how to use a system or a computer. And you have to be fast and efficient at this stuff. And then Fridays are supposed to be my lighter days. And sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. It just depends. It
So
depends.
you've gave a lot of great different qualities that you think you need and advice. What would be one thing if you could narrow it down to that you would say, if you're going into construction, I recommend this?
I would say the biggest thing is just always be learning. You never know what experience is going to help you.
Mhm.
Some bit of knowledge is going to help you in achieving your goals or open another door. And that's another thing too, to be comfortable in those situations. So like I said, I'm so comfortable now that if there's more girls than boys, I feel odd.
Mhm.
But I was very lucky to grow up with that experience unknown to me at the time, but it's very comfortable for me now. One challenge though would be in the field, there's definitely a different culture, a different language. I got a potty mouth like the rest of them. It's tough. And then, 2 seconds later, I step into a conference room and I'm meeting with the owners and the engineers, and I got to put on a different hat. And they don't respond the same to that type of language.
Mhm.
And you have to remain flexible and focused. But that's why I say it all goes back to knowledge. I find that I can control my language better when I don't get flustered as much. And the way I don't get flustered is I ask questions and I pay attention and listen. So, yeah, there's a
That's
lot.
great. I think you've more than filled all the information I could at least ask. Um, if there's any more resources that you know of or any more information you'd like to share.
Um, I guess I have two pieces of advice though.
Okay.
I have two. And I guess my first one was just kind of have no fear. Don't be afraid of the answer no. And that old saying, the answer is always no until you ask. It's very true. I hear a lot of times that there is still a pay gap for a lot of women. I personally don't think I have much of a gap for myself, but I had to ask for it. And actually, the first few times I asked, I got told no.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to wait till I had leverage and I had proof of my abilities and successful projects and numbers and margins to help support that. And I didn't give up. The way I got the job I have now, I cold called. You never know. So don't just don't be afraid.
Okay.
And my second piece of advice is mascara. The reason I say that is, most days, as I was telling you before we started, I didn't even know what to do with my hair because I'm in a hard hat every day. I'm in jeans and steel-toed boots and a safety vest. And, that beats the heck out of stilettos. I will tell you, it's nice. But I still need something to make me feel confident. And for me, it's mascara. And it's something easy to carry with you. You always have it. You can travel with it, and I like to say that mascara is what helps me have that extra bit of confidence. And sometimes you need that confidence because you're not going to always know what's going on. You're not always going to have the answer. No matter how many times you read the 1,000-page document, you're going to miss stuff. So to still be confident about it. And if you don't know, you say you don't know and you find out, make sure you find out and you follow up, but to be able to answer that. So I would encourage everyone out there to find your mascara or whatever gives you that little bit of confidence that helps you push through the day. Because there are a lot of stressful situations, whether it's technical or it's people or it's just the project. It's fast moving stuff and it's a lot to keep up with. So put your mascara in your pocket.
I love that though. I've never heard something like that, but the analogy to relate that to real life, because it is sometimes just the littlest things that make us feel the best about ourselves.
Definitely.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time
Well,
today.
thank
It
you
was
for
a
having
pleasure.
me. I'm so excited about your platform.
Thank you.
Wonderful.